Hey, housewives.
Hey, we are excited for this guest.
Yes, we are.
We absolutely loved sitting down with Desiree, and this is one of those that I do. I want you to grab a coffee and just sit and listen to what she has walked through. Some people just, when they share their story, share it with such grace and light. And while you go through something difficult, some people can just deliver their stories with just such a different heart posture that I admire. And this is one of them.
Yes. While there are certain nuances of her story that makes it unique, one of them being that she is deaf and has cochlear implants, and it's a genetic. And so it was passed down, I believe, from her mother, and then
Mhm.
she has a child with it. So going through some of the things of what that looks like and what it's like going to a church of all hearing people
Mhm.
and what makes that different and what kind of relationship you have or when you're just seeing
Mhm.
it, seeing the physical reactions of that, but then also getting pregnant
Yeah.
and an unplanned pregnancy and
As a
how
teen.
as a teen and
Mhm.
how God spoke to her.
Yeah, and it's actually a really beautiful story, and one in which, she questioned things, talked to her family about things. I think there was some, difficulty in making the decision of whether or not she was going to have an abortion or keep the baby. But due to just her trusting in the Lord, and when he came and saw her and met with her, she chose to keep the baby. And this is her story.
So this is for the one who kept the baby. Hey, housewife.
Hey, hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. We are in the thick of it. We have got another incredible guest for you this summer, and I'm going to have Tracy introduce her.
All right. Hi, Desiree. Welcome to the Unlikely Housewives. Okay, so from a young age, Desiree's hearing began to go away progressively. Hearing loss has been a part of her story most of the way through. At age 18, she was a young, pregnant single mom. She was married and continued building her family with another child. She grew up in a very legalistic church environment and has dealt with insecurity, severe low self esteem, depression, anxiety, and anger. She became a Christian and has gone through a journey of learning what it means to have a relationship with Jesus and breaking through the religious and legalistic barriers. Another which she wrote about in her new book, Created to Relate: Living Beyond Religion, that was recently launched. Today, she is going to share so much with us and especially her heart. So, welcome, Desiree, to the Unlikely Housewives.
Hi, so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, tell us a little bit about, you, like Tracy said in your bio, that you grew up in a very legalistic home
Mm.
and you started losing your hearing at an early age. Tell us a little bit how that started you on your journey of towards all of this that you're going to share with us.
Well, my mom always took me to church. She took me from probably the beginning, I think. And my mom was deaf too. She had the progressive nerve deafness that I had. So she had found the Lord and she wanted us to be in church. So we went, but we went to it was a Baptist church, and not all Baptist church. I try to put that out there that they're not all the same. They're not all
Very,
what
very true.
talk about, but
Yeah.
this one was very legalistic, and um, it's just very behavior focused. I think that was the thing. It was all about what you did and how you had to look and how you had to dress and how you had to be. And from the beginning, I really recognized that. I don't think I understood the effects of it till later, but I got my first hearing aid when I was 9, so that affected social things as much as in church too. So my mom had a interpreter in church, so I had that experience too. So, being in a church with all hearing people except for my mom and I was another part of the experience,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which was difficult too. But,
Did you find that because your mom had gone through it, could she help you process as things were happening, or was that not in your case?
that
Because
was
she
not
knew.
really in my case. She didn't
Okay.
really talk about any of it. And even she passed away a couple of years ago. And it really wasn't even until I read some of the things that she had left behind did I know even some of the things she experienced. And I wish that we could have shared some of that more. But
Mm.
she didn't really invite me into those places a lot. But I think that came out of the legalistic and religious place too. It's almost like people seem like all those things had to be kept to yourself. Like you
Yeah.
didn't want to share those things or share where there might have been weaknesses or shared where
Yeah.
those experiences. Because even with people's relationship with the Lord, I didn't hear people share about their personal experiences with Him. And even, the whole confessing your sins to one another that you may be healed. No, we all kept it in. And that was what I saw from early on too, is we don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about
Mhm.
all of that. We keep it in here, because we might look bad or we might not look like we're the right kind of Christian. And that was a really difficult thing for me to break through, I
Well,
think.
and there's a lot of things with pride in that, and then once the pride takes root, then it's the internal shame of, "Well, I haven't said anything about it now, and now I feel worse if
Mhm,
I were," so it for her sake, it was she hadn't told you, and then it was like, "Well, how do I go back and tell you?" You
mhm.
know, and we know that more open or we're talking more open, we're sharing a lot of these topics about you're not alone, and you get to have those conversations in such a grace-filled, releasing, bringing things into the light to where you find intimacy and connection with other people who are going through maybe not the same exact thing, but something similar.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because God's kind of funny in how He works because we did find out that this was a genetic thing. They didn't think it was at first. So, but when I
Oh,
had children, I wanted to find out. So I went to genetic counseling, and my younger son does have the same hearing loss. So I find that I really hated that he had to have this and had to deal with it. I was really praying that God would break it off and just heal it completely so that
Mhm.
it would pass on. But He has chosen to allow him to have it. So, but I get to do things differently with my son.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think he's seen me walk it differently anyway, because I've been pretty verbal. I think because I really was angry about the way that people didn't share things, both religiously and, in their faith with God and with my hearing, that I was determined that if I ended up in this place and one of my kids had it, that I would be different. And
Mm.
uh, so it shows how God uses the not so great things and what I've learned from her experiences. I did learn and take away. I just wish it would have been a little different in some ways. But my son and I have a great relationship, and I'm able to share with him, and I'm able to help him through the process of losing his hearing now. So
And how old were you when you got your implants?
my implants I was about 31.
Okay. And
Yeah.
is that something that is that you've talked about in the future for your son? Or this is it's progressive and it's when it gets to that point, that's when you need them?
Yeah, it's progressive. So when they feel like you don't, you do all the testing and all of that, and
Mhm.
when they believe that you don't have anything else to lose, it's kind of at that breakthrough road. You're either going to choose to live without the hearing aids, or you're going to choose to do this and go a
Yeah.
different way. So it's a very personal choice for people.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but it's been a wonderful experience for me. So, and he's planning on doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're growing up in a legalistic church. Your mom is very private with her disability and and so you're left alone wondering and you walk away from the church.
Mm. Yeah, because that really led to my detour in a way because it was very lonely. And
Mhm.
on one hand, I'm hearing God say, "I'm here, I'll never leave you or forsake you." But that's one of the things I've had a really hard time believing because I am a deep thinker and I'm a deep feeler too. So when I feel like you're distant from me or you're like, it just didn't feel like he was there. I felt very alone. And I think it just got to the place where, as a teenager, a young adult, you're looking all around you. We compare, women especially, we
Yeah.
compare, and I'm like, how is it you're saying this, but I'm seeing these people who aren't even following you like
Mhm.
this? So I decided to say I really didn't buy what he was doing. That was part of why of the detour. And that's why I felt alone. I think because if people aren't sharing and aren't connecting with you in that way, you feel like you're doing things alone, which is why I have such a heart for mentoring, because I really take a lot of time to pour into the girls, the young adults, especially, and give them a place to share those things that they're struggling with and to help them walk through it with the Lord. And I really do feel like if I had had some of that a little differently, maybe things would have gone a different way for me. There's no telling. We can what if
Right.
things all day long, but
Right.
but that's what I think that's part of what caused the loneliness is because everyone just isolates themselves. And if no one's connecting, that's why God created us too, is for relationship with one another. And when that's not happening, it leads to all kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, and I think the isolation isn't just, I mean, you can isolate and still have a really great relationship with the Lord, but you can also let the enemy in and create stories and conversations that something isn't true. And then that's what you're sitting on
Mhm.
instead of leaning into community who can pour truth over you in whatever your circumstances is and helps you really just live out what God's called you to do.
Yeah.
So tell us, because we know your story, but we want to get to the point for our listeners in which you've walked away and you started to make some choices on your own, and tell our listeners where that led.
Well, I went kind of hard and fast. And I was really, the root of my stuff was I was looking to be loved. That's really what it was. I wasn't feeling very loved from the Lord, and I wasn't feeling very loved from people, especially important people in life. So it sent me down a road where I ended up pregnant with my older son.
And how old were you?
I was 18,
Okay.
almost
18. And how did your family react to that? What was the response when they found out?
not very well, 'cause of course it doesn't look good, but also my mom had gone through her own this really was kind of a generational issue in a sense. My mom had gotten pregnant when she was 15 and had, my sister, my older sister, and she married her father, and she ended up divorced and all of that. So then my older sister ended up pregnant 4 times out of wedlock. My younger sister, the same thing. So it's just had been such a trend. And I think I was the one because my older sister went the road she went. I think there was so much fear with me because I was the next one about doing the same thing. And I think I shattered, you know, the hope that things would be different a little bit for my
Yeah.
mom, especially.
Okay, so you were 18 when you got pregnant. How old was your sister when she got pregnant for the first time?
I can't remember. I mean, she was like 17, 18 too. She
Okay.
was around the same age, I think.
So, okay. So your mom's and then what did you decide to keep the child? You you kept the child? Was there pressure to not keep the child? And then what about the father? Where was he in all this?
Well, okay, so I did have lots of voices. I was working at Walmart, and I remember working in the food court. And this mother, she was a mother. It fascinated me. And she was telling me that I should get rid of the baby, and go on with my life kind of thing. And so there were all kinds of voices like that around. And then some people just didn't talk about it at all. So,
The avoidance, like if we don't talk about it, it's not real.
Yeah.
yeah.
The church is
So,
good at that. Let me tell you. Yeah, right? We're not gonna address this, so we're gonna ignore that it happens.
yeah, no. So there was variety, and then there were those who encouraged keeping the baby, but it almost seemed like there was less of them. But so I don't know. I just went to the Lord one day. I was crying. I didn't know. I was really in a pit of a place, really. And I heard him say to me that to keep the baby and that he would be my husband and he would be his father. So I really heard that. That was the first time I think I'd heard God in an audible way. I haven't heard him that way a ton, but I have heard him some. And that
Mhm.
was one of those, but I think he knew that I needed it in that personal way
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
really solidify that the father was just he was out of the picture at that point. And I think it's worked out much better that he stayed out of the picture. So I do think sometimes in some of these instances, as much as we want things to work out or want the family picture, sometimes it's not the best thing
Yeah.
to try to force that.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned from my experience, I guess, you know?
I I would say that, I mean, with some of the other guests that we've already spoken to over the summer, is that a lot of times it's when it- it's almost he sees the future so much better than we do.
Mm.
Like it's just I couldn't make up this. I mean, and he always has a better plan for us anyways.
Yeah.
His plan is greater. His
Mhm.
ways are not our ways, and he works outside of the box and says he provides and makes a way. And a lot of time we're like, there's no way out of this tunnel. And
Mhm.
yet he is faithful.
Yeah.
Mm, always.
Okay. So you decided to keep the baby,
Mhm.
and what I find that very not interesting. I find that very sincere, like authentic to you, that you heard him in an audible way. Like that must have been just like this moment of, I mean, obviously it was a turning point for you.
Yeah.
And that's the way that he communicated that with you.
And it was a pivotal point for me because I think it built some trust for me with him. I mean, and that's been a long time coming to fully trust him, but I think that was the beginning of, okay, he loves me enough to really say this in a way that I can hear him. And just the personal nature, like, you won't be alone. Again, it was another way of him letting me know I wouldn't be alone in this, that
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
child wouldn't be alone in this, that he'd be with us. So it was very personal and it was very pivotal for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how at 18 you have a baby, and I mean, how does life change after that? I mean,
That's a loaded
that
question.
is a very
Sorry.
loaded question. I mean, I mean,
Well, the biggest thing is I remember when they handed my son to me and I realized, I mean, I knew it before then, but I realized in a real way that my life was not my own anymore and
Mhm.
that this little child was dependent on me.
Mhm.
And the other thing too is I think I learned to love in a whole new way. Just the way he looked at me, I don't know, he helped me look at myself a little differently because I got to see myself through his eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
I was
So
mom, it didn't matter what I had done up till then, like, it hadn't mattered all the stuff. He
yeah,
looked at me with such unconditional love. It gave me another view of God's love for me. Because when God looks at us through the lens of Jesus, that's what he sees. He doesn't see the stuff anymore. He sees who we are in him, and that was kind of a turning point for me too, because up until then, I really didn't value my life very much, and I often wonder what would might have happened if my son Kyle hadn't come along, because he loved me so much and he needed me. That was enough. Like, it's easier for me to love other people. It's easier for me to support other people and love on other people than it is to do it for myself. And it was like that with him. It's like God gave me new purpose in this little boy,
mm,
and it really started changing some of that. It was still a long process for me, but I really think healing began in that moment when I saw, I don't know, him looking at me and just being content in my arms. It was just fascinating.
I love how God, and I've said this before, love how God uses the parent relationship here on earth to give us so much insight into how he sees us
Yeah.
and how he loves us, what that is. I mean, I don't know that I mean, obviously it's by design. I mean, because he wants to have that relationship with us. He is our heavenly father, but it's such a tangible way. And I I often, when talking to others, I think sometimes as Christians we so oftenly we forget that, like, that's dad. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, he's at we say father, heavenly father, and it sounds so official and things like that, but it's like, but also just like playing catch in the backyard, or shooting hoops
Mhm.
with your dad on the driveway. Like, that's the love, like, that stuff. He loves us like that,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
more than just, like, heavenly I don't know. I'm not explaining this well.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, no, it's as simple as that though. Like we
Mm.
overcomplicate it. That's what you're like, that's what I'm getting is it's like,
That
yeah, it's as simple as like what we desire, in that like communication is it we've always said this, he knows our heart. We may say one thing and do another. He knows
yeah.
exactly what it is, and that's like what a gift, as a parent. I'm like, man, I wish I knew what that heart said right now.
Yeah,
To feel,
right.
like
Yeah.
Right.
so tell us a little bit more about this journey though, because you fast forward and you have chosen to walk the way with the Lord because He has shown you that He is going to be your husband, your father, and everything that you need for you, your life, and your child.
Mm.
Um, and you move forward and getting married and having another child.
Yeah. So, yeah. And my husband adopted my oldest son too. So he brought someone else into his life who chose to take on the role. So, which is interesting because I think that's God's grace too, in such a way that he's given my son such a perfect picture of
Mm,
who he is and what he does. But that was something else for me too. Like God chooses us. He wants a relationship with us and how special that is.
yeah.
So yeah, and I had my other son, they were about 5 years apart. And I was a stay-at-home mom mainly until they were in school. And we were going to church and doing the thing, when we sent them to Christian school and did all the stuff with them too. And I was just still on that process, that journey of growing in the Lord. And it was very slow, it feels like, that growth of relationship in the Lord.
So, how was it getting back into the church?
Oh,
Like, were you very I mean, coming from a legalistic church, and the when you I call it church shopping, right? Like, when we're trying to find a church home, we're looking for all the components to be. Did you find it difficult to connect with churches, or was it something that like, you're like, "No, I need something that is not legalist. Like, I need to
yeah.
the relationship part more." Was that part of your finding your church home and a safe space in
Yeah,
there?
well, that was an interesting journey because this is a whole other thing. Interestingly enough, I went back to the same place because it's the place I grew up in. I had not really, I really wasn't at that place in my walk or my understanding of all of this that was familiar. It was a place I went back to. And actually, my husband's sister, because my husband's parents had actually come up. His dad was a pastor, and his dad was pastoring the church that I had grown up in. And so he was a different kind of pastor too. So when I went back with his sister. His sister helped me get back in. I was actually pregnant when I went back to church. So I walked back
Wow.
into the church pregnant. That was difficult, and
Yeah.
especially in the church that I grew up in. But I have to say positively that these people, um, because I had grown up there, I think, and there was a personal relationship to a degree there. They took me in. I mean, and I felt like I was accepted there, and they threw a little shower for me and stuff like that. So I didn't feel completely disconnected or ousted by any means. So I ended up going back to the same place actually for a while. That
That's
change was
incredible
That
because
takes a lot of courage.
that, 1, takes a
Mhm.
ton of courage, and 2, it's not what you expect, because I'll say when people often when people leave churches, and they're just like, "This is so formulaic," and, like you said, legalistic, or we just write that church off
Mhm.
almost. But then God kind of redeemed that
Mhm.
church for you and created a whole new community, and for somewhere you used to feel isolated,
Mhm.
now they were wrapping you into their community, and it was after you had gotten pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, things were still very, we didn't talk about anything too deep. There were still things
Right,
there,
right. I mean, it's
but it
still, yeah.
wasn't. Yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
But okay, so how well so you said your husband's sister. So this was obviously did you how did you know her? And was she the one that introduced you to your husband, or you grew up around the same? So I'd like how that little work, that matchmaker.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. My husband and I were in the same denomination. So he was living in West Virginia. His dad had a church in West Virginia. So they were in the same association, as they would call it.
Uh-huh.
So they had like a youth retreat. So we actually met a couple of years before this at a youth retreat up here in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I knew him. There was somewhat of a friendship there, but I was a pretty broken teenager. So I was kind of annoying at that point.
Aren't all teenage?
I
I know
know,
I
right?
was.
Yeah,
I was
I
totally
definitely
annoying.
was.
Totally broken. Totally broken.
But his sister and I became friends because she ended up in the same place I did, actually. She ended up marrying the father of her son, but we were kind of sharing this situation together, and it created an interesting friendship and a unique friendship for us to walk through that together. So that was another thing God gave. She was pregnant. She was about 6 months ahead of me. So,
Mm,
Okay. Okay. So so you guys were on that journey
journey.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and it was worse for her because she was a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
So, but she was a good friend to me.
Okay. So you guys are at the church, and then where does brother come in? How so you knew
Well,
him from years ago, but I mean, how does he yeah.
he came home for her wedding, and all right, this is another interesting part. I had there had become some tension at my house. I needed to stay somewhere else for a little while. So they took me in for a little while. So I was actually living with my husband's parents
Oh
when
my
he came
goodness.
back from Europe from
Wow.
because he was in the military.
Okay.
So and then we kind of struck up, we started talking, and it just kind of went from there slowly.
Oh my goodness. What God's grace is sufficient, and it is just so amazing what he can do when you surrender your life to him and just say, "Hey, hands open, I'm all yours. I'm trusting in you in this plan." And look at all these dots he's connected for you. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny because before he had come back and we were talking, I think we both, on our individual levels, had come to a place where if this was what God had for us, then we would be content with that. I had come to that place where I said to the Lord that if it's just you, me, and Kyle, then I'll be okay.
Mhm.
And it was shortly after that he came back and God opened the door. There is something about that surrender piece that when we surrender fully, he brings in that other plan. He just needs to know our hearts are surrendered to him.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
That
Mm.
is so yeah. In my life there's a couple. It's just a few like but it is that place of really knowing. I mean, we can say it all day long. Like
Right.
my life is surrender. I live for you, Lord, but like in that moment of like
Mhm.
no really, Lord. Like
Yeah.
he can tell of all right, you mean it this time. And then
Mhm.
before we know it, he does something and you're like I wasn't expecting that.
Right.
Okay. Well, especially after I just told you it was okay, that I would be totally content with this. Okay. So he comes back from Europe.
Mhm.
You are living with his parents. Okay. Are you pregnant still or you've had Kyle?
No, I
How
had
old
had
was Kyle?
Kyle was probably, I don't know, well, he was 5 or 6 months old probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Kyle was 7 months old, sitting in a high chair when we had our first date together.
Oh, that's a cute little visual. So, okay, so how long you said he came back for his sister's wedding? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it was just a short planned
That
trip?
was short. Yeah, and then he
Okay.
came back for Christmas. So it was Christmas that we went out, I think it was. I'm trying to remember the details. Yeah.
How long was his what's it leave for overseas?
Mm, I don't
Because I
think
mean,
he wasn't here too long for the wedding. But when he came back in Christmas, I think he was here for about a week or so, maybe.
okay.
And then
And
he
then
was living in South Carolina. He went back to
okay,
South Carolina after that.
got you. Okay. So he goes and so then starts a long distance relationship.
Mhm.
And how did that go? That one I don't that's kind of that I mean, that's really hard. And that's pre-FaceTime.
Yeah, right?
Right, and that's with hearing issues with the phone.
Right.
So
Yeah, right.
we wrote letters a lot. We did talk some, but I really had a hard time on the phone understanding. So that was difficult. I'm sure I missed a lot of things a lot of times in those conversations, and they cost a whole lot more because it was long
That's
distance.
Oh my
true. I
gosh.
forgot roaming charges.
Yep.
So
Yeah, well,
children, there used to be, just for our younger listeners, I wanna let them know, there used to be phones that were connected to the wall. Each house had a landline. That's what we called them because they were connected to the land. And it used to cost money if you called anywhere outside of your zip code.
mm,
I remember prepaid phone cards.
mm.
I cannot imagine. So tell me, do you have all those letters? The romantic in me, which there's not much of, it's just this big. But do you have the letters that you guys wrote to each other still?
Yeah, we do have some of them. Yeah.
Oh,
Those will
fun.
be great for down the road and for your boys. We have another podcast guest who's been on, and he used to write letters when he was away, and they turned into part of a book. So,
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
speaking of book, I want to get to that so we have enough time. So fast forward a little bit. You're married now, and you guys have another child. And where did you end up settling? Back home or where he was in the military?
No, we ended up staying here. My parents had a house, and then they had property where there was an apartment house on there. And so we started in the apartment house on the first floor. And now we're down at the house. We've taken over the property. So we have been in Rhode Island since the beginning.
No, all of this has accumulated to a book that you have written.
Yes, some of it has gone in there. Yes, and we're at a different church too. That was a whole other thing. We had been praying about a different church. So we ended up at a church up in about 40 minutes away. God has a sense of humor, can I tell you? Like New
Right?
England people do not drive 40 minutes, okay? 20
No,
minutes is
they
fine.
don't.
Um,
They don't. And I tell you, I can speak to that because I lived in Maryland and if anything is further than 15 minutes, oh, I'm not driving that.
yeah, right.
Crazy. Sorry. That resonated so much for me. So,
But
okay.
because what happened at the church I was at, there was a big split. It was really terrible. So ended up in the home church after that and just really felt like God was calling us somewhere else. I was feeling like he wanted to bring us deeper. And it wasn't going to happen there. So again, I just prayed. It's just fascinating when we start praying and asking God for things, what he does. And our next door neighbor actually was working at the church that we go to. She was like the secretary or administrative kind of person. So she said they're looking for a facilities manager here. So he put in for it, and we just prayed that, okay, if it's supposed to be, then we go. So he got in, and then we prayed. We said, we'll give it a year, and we'll see if this is where God wants us. And we've been there for the last 17 going on 18 years, and he just became an elder. So
And he just became an elder.
That's
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. I
um,
find that when we leave our hands open like that, I'll give it a year, Lord.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you, but am I with you?
Yeah,
He's like, no, you're with me.
exactly.
All right. So talk to us about your book. We want to make sure that we highlight that for you. It's called Created to Relate. Is that correct?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit more about it and how you even decided, like, all right, I'm going to write a book.
Well, I had worked probably 10 years in as a special ed para in the school, but it was kind of getting to the place where I needed to let that go for different reasons. And then I was home for a little while. My oldest son was starting to look towards, graduating. And I realized that, okay, motherhood is short. There's something else about, there's something else next. And that's when I started praying again. What do I do? And he just reminded me back to my days when I would journal a lot. I loved writing, all that stuff. And that's when like blogging was starting to be really popular. I'm like, so I figured, well, maybe I'll play around with that. So I started doing that, just sharing the things that God was showing me, just really simple. And then I started dreaming a little bit and just said, do you think I could write a book? I don't know. I really didn't have the confidence, but I felt like he was saying to start something. And I thought that I knew that my story would be part of it, but I thought it would be more like a compilation of other people's stories as well. But it ended up being 8 to 10 year long journey of just looking back on what he had done from the very beginning and from when I had said yes to him, and just the whole way through and all the things that he had done and shown me. And a lot of things he worked out as I was writing the book. Actually, there were some layers that needed to be worked on, some days of crying and repenting and being healed. And so it's mainly my story, my journey, but also with application for other people, questions for other people to really think about, am I stuck in this place? Are these mindsets that I'm stuck in? Because if we don't recognize them, we'll never move past them. So that's what it's become. And also like the end of it, I try to give some ways to continue moving forward in freedom, because I think freedom in Christ, yes, we have it. Jesus died for it, but we have to fight for it daily. And it's an intentional walk with him through our lives. So I pray that I left people with the how to do that a little bit more, because I feel like that's really the thing in the churches. There's no whys, there's no hows. People need whys and hows. And
Yeah.
I'm praying that through this, that I can kind of expose the roots of things, help expose the roots of the issues and the mindsets and the strongholds and all of that. But I can also give hope for a life of freedom and that abundant life that Christ gives. So that's my prayer with the book as it moves forward.
That's so good.
That is so good. And you just summed up that perfectly. We have freedom in Christ, but it's a fight daily.
Yeah.
Because we so easily get into our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it numerous times on different episodes for this whole summer series. And this is a journey all the way to heaven, not just now. And we've got it. We're done. We're good. Okay, let's just go on living, this comfortable life that we live. No, we are living with him on the daily. We have the spiritual battles and the, internal fights and dialogues with ourselves and the enemy. And, it is work, but it's the beautiful work that Christ has done for us on the cross that has given us this opportunity to just as simple as share your story and write it for somebody else who doesn't feel alone and who can feel connected with somebody else who's walked something similar.
Yeah, I pray for that too, that people will not feel alone. It'll be something that if someone is feeling alone in all of that, I don't know, it's that song that they'll find a friend in me, kind of like I really want for that to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to make some friends along the way and build some community. That's really my heart. And to do this together, that no one's alone in it, that God's given us each other for this and for such a time as this too. So
yeah.
Amen.
In a world where we're more connected than socially connected.
Yeah.
I say that in air quotes, socially connected than ever, but actually more isolated
and feel more alone.
And feel more alone than ever. Yes. So something that we're asking all of our guests this summer is, as God is redeeming this, as redeeming your story, your journey, your story, what's been the most encouraging thing to you, or what would you say that you are looking forward to, or you want? I'm just kind of it's an open-ended question of redeeming, of just because he redeems all things. And sometimes we're in the process of being redeemed, and, and sometimes this part's redeemed and that's not. And it's, Yeah, I'm gonna let you answer that.
Well, no, I think that's a great question, really. Like, I think for me, I'm really realizing, well, it's exposing to me how often I take things on and how I try to take control of things. When I get anxious, you just want to hold on to something to feel like you're in control. And I'm constantly slipping back into that mindset of doing things in my own strength. And the more that I realize that I can pause and give it back to him and let him take the reins again, like the more I practice these things that he's showing me, the more freedom that comes. And each victory gives me hope for the other areas that I still need to work in. Like it's like you said, it's work, but it's beautiful work and it's freeing work. And the more freedom I experience, the more I want. So it makes me want to do the work in the other areas so that I can become more free. So I really feel like that's something big that he's doing right now. And I'm excited that it's a continual redeeming because one of my prayers is that he helps me be as close to him as I can, and then he takes me home. And then, like, that's all I want is to be as close as I can here and as free as I can be here before I experience it all.
I
That's
love
beautiful.
that prayer. Bring me as close as I can here and then bring me home. That's such a good reminder. Well, on that note, and there couldn't be another better ending to that
Yeah.
to wrap everything up.
Thank you, Desiree, for sharing your heart with us.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you for being obedient to God and listen. I mean, and just saying yes to the process. Like sometimes, like he asks us to do, you just start writing, you're journaling and, and you said an 8 to 10 year journey.
Mhm.
That's not a short time. So you continued to fight and to show up every day. And it's stories like yours of where, hindsight, we can see where he's put together all the pieces and the roads that he connected for us that gives us hope for the tough times or for the hard times that we're all going to face, whatever that circumstance may be. So just want to say thank you so much for sharing your heart and sharing your book with us.
Yeah.
And then we're going to tell all of our listeners to go check out your website, which is
www.arenewedcreation.com.
arenewedcreation.com. Thank you so much for saying that. And you can find all of her social media handles on there and more information about the book and all of that. So thank you so much, Desiree. We so appreciate it. And then until next time, housewives.
Bye.
Bye.